Welcome to part 2 of my Stage 3 upgrades video. Now in this one I'm mainly going to cover the counter steer mod, which is pretty tricky depending on how you want to approach it. A lot of YouTubers out there I want to give thanks to because they helped me get an idea of which direction I want to go. YouTubers like Beaver's Hobby, Sammy Baca, Garage RC, BMR, whoever else out there. If I forgot your name, sorry, but everybody else that's gone through and did this counter steer mod, I've kind of got some tips from, and I decided to go my own direction while doing this because I want to try a couple different variations of gear ratios. Seems like mostly everybody is doing the 1.875 gear ratio because they're taking the little 15-tooth pinion gear and modifying that to make into the counter steer mod. But I found some other gears out there that I can use to go from 1.25, 1.5, 1.75, and 2.0. I've read a lot of comments and things out there on the internet saying that a lower gear ratio is better, and other people are saying a higher gear ratio is better or it works fine. So I'm not really too sure which one's going to work best for me. So that's why I want to be able to try pretty much all of them and figure out which one's best for me. I actually came out with a method to where I could interchange them out, the different sizes, without having to permanently glue them. It's not the best, foolproof method, but there's probably other people out there that could do it better than me. If you took enough time to really do it perfect, it could be a really good way to, be able to change out the gear ratios without having to permanently super glue them all or get a bunch of spur gears and this and that to glue, so I'll show you what I did to make that work, and anything else that I might have ran across while doing this mod. I also want to go over something that I talked about in part 1 of my Stage 3 upgrades video when I was putting the motor into the body. The motor mounts, I was actually wrong, or I was guessing really, that the little plates here for the motor mount were, let's see if I get this to focus, were for different body sizes, like from 90 to 98 millimeter, and that's not what these are for. These are actually for different gear ratios. So if you're using a different pinion, like a smaller pinion gear or a bigger one, with either a smaller or bigger spur gear, this will shift the motor left or right, depending on what size gears you're using for the ratio. So just wanted to clarify that real quick. So if anyone was wondering what those plates were really for, because it comes with 3 sets. The 3 sets come with the car. So if you get the car out of the box, you should have all 3 sets in there. And I think the best gear ratio is already on the car from stock, from what I noticed, or at least the ratio that everybody seems to be using. So I stuck with that. So yeah, I'm just going to go over what I did to make these gears and how to interchange them. One thing I want to also note is that this is for 94 millimeter bodies only. This does not work for the 90 millimeter bodies. There's probably other ways you could do it to make it work for 94 millimeter bodies, but from what I'm doing, I can't use 90 millimeter bodies. I can only do this with 94 millimeter bodies. So I just want to let you know, if you wanted to try this out, you might have to try something different or shorten the gears a lot to make 90 millimeter bodies work, because what I have set up for mine is only going to work for 94 millimeter. So I just wanted to let you know, and let me get going on showing you what I did here. Now, what I mean by 1.25 or 1.5 gear ratio and so on and so forth is that when the front tire rotates one time, a full rotation, the back tires will rotate 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 all the way up to 2, depending on which ratio you use. So when I'm saying 1.5, and 7.5, 2.0, that's what I'm talking about. So 1 full rotation in the front will complete 1 1/4 all the way up to maybe 2 rotations in the back. And that's what gives you the, almost like the simulation of a rear-wheel drive car. But even though this is an all-wheel drive car, so it helps give you that, almost like that throw on the back end to make the back end, throw itself out, kind of like a rear-wheel drive drift car would do. compared to all four wheels spinning the exact same revolutions. So I just want to go over that. I'm thinking maybe that 1.5 might be the best place for me to start because it's like right in the middle. It's, you know, it's not too high, not too low. Let's see if I can get this to focus better. So you can see on this one, this is a 12 tooth little pinion gear that I put on the spur gear. And that'll give me 1.5 gear ratio compared to the 8 teeth that are usually on the spur gear. So usually there's 8 little teeth right there. And how you get that that fraction is by taking, say, like the 12 tooth and then putting it over the 8 tooth, and that's where you get your 1.5 gear ratio, because 12 divided by 8 will give you 1.5. So I have a 10 tooth, so I can give me 1.25, and then 14 will give me 1.75, and then a 16 tooth will give me 2.0. That's why when you see other people doing their videos are using this 15 tooth pinion that comes with the car, and that gives you a 1.875. So, but I'm actually not going to be doing that, because since I have, you know, 1.75 and 2.0, I'm just not even going to bother with the 1.875. I don't really see the point. But if I was going to do that, I have a spare little 15 tooth one from my WL Toys K969, which is almost exactly the same as the one that comes on the Mini-Z here. So I would probably hack this one up and, you know, save my original one and not mess with this one, because it's the same thing. It's actually smaller too, so it would have to do less work to get it down to size, because you need to be like 4 millimeter tall. So I just have to chop off that little piece here at the bottom. It's a lot less material to cut off than, say, this one. And it's basically the exact same thing anyway, so I'd rather just hack this one up and keep this one, you know, the way it is. So that's what I would do if I was going to do the 1.875. And since I'm running 94 millimeter bodies, I have to use these spur gears that are longer like this compared to the shorter ones that are for the 90 millimeter, which most people on YouTube I've seen do the 90 millimeter size spur gears. So theirs are much shorter looking than, say, what I would have to do. I would have to do it and have the gear all the way out here. So it'd be that far out if I did it. So I found some gears online that could do what I want to do, which I got these Mini-Z 4x4 for a crawler, little gears, like the whole drive gear set has a bunch of different, you know, spur gears and stuff in there, and I just took out all the little pinions they had in there from 10 tooth to 16 tooth. So I think this is the 14. So they all look like this, pretty much this tall. Hard to get focused, but yeah. So I have a 10, a 12, a 14, and a 16, which will give me the variations that I'm looking for. And there's a method. On this one, I was originally going to do the permanent, you know, super glue version of it, where I can't really interchange them out. So I took a different approach on putting this gear on the spur gear. As you see, that came out pretty good. It's not glued on yet. I'm gonna have to glue this one on later, but this is the only one I'm gonna glue. The other ones, I'm gonna keep them to where I can interchange them out. But because I already did this one before I came up with the idea of doing the interchangeable ones. So this one is just gonna have to stay permanent. Luckily, I had 3 of these little 31 tooth spur gears that come with the car. Let's see, look at that. Yeah, 31. So I mean, that's how these come stock. Usually they have the 31 tooth spur gear already on the car when you get them from the factory anyway. So luckily, I think they come, there's like 2 in a set. So there's one on the car, and then there's one in the backup set that you get in the box when you get the car. And then I ended up going and buying a whole nother set of pinions and spur gears, just to have an extra set, because I knew I was going to be trying a whole bunch of different things and chopping these things up. So if I messed up or anything, I'd have some backups. And so I have 3 of the 31 tooth spur gears for the 94 millimeter. I have a bunch of ones for the 90 millimeter too, but I'm not going to be running any 90 millimeter bodies. But I do need to use the 90 millimeter spur gears to actually do this mod, because of how tall these pinions are from the 4x4 set. So if I try to put them on this one, it would be too tough, because they're already the perfect height to where if you put them on the 90 millimeter size spur gear, it's actually the perfect height to where I could put those on, and it'll actually end up the exact same height as the 94 millimeter one needs to be. So that actually worked out really well. So yeah, they have 8 teeth on here, but what I decided to do was chop off 6 of the little teeth and put on, just leave 2, one on each side like that. And this is how I'm going to interchange each one of the gears, by sliding them over that, and then they sit all the way down flat, flush on there. And as long as you keep them nice and tight, like friction fit, they do pretty well. So you just gotta be careful when you're doing this to not hack up these too much to where it won't fit, or it'll be too loose and like fall off or everything. Like, this was really difficult to do. Like, just drilling a hole through there was already difficult, because it needs to be 5 millimeter in diameter when you cut a hole through this. So I had to cut like a perfect 5 millimeter hole, and then I had to cut out 2 little notches that at least went, I think, about 4 to 5 millimeter deep, to be able to slide over these teeth on here, which was just absolute pain. My fingers were killing me after doing these, so it took me a few hours. It's not fun to do, so I'm hoping to just only have to do it once and be done, and it'll hopefully continue to work. And if I find one that I really like and just want to stick with it, I can always end up just super gluing it on and then just making it permanent. But yeah, and also the smaller you go with your teeth, so these this little 10 tooth gear was really difficult, because there was not a lot of meat on this plastic to work with. As you can see, I got real close to the end there, to where it's like almost going off the sides there. So the smaller you go, the harder it is with these, because you don't have a lot of material to work with. Also, if you cut like not a perfect hole through the center, as long as you get this area perfect, it doesn't really matter what happens up here. As long as you can seat it down all the way flat, it should sit flat and flush on the bottom there. So it's okay if you kind of mess up, you can always kind of correct it. But just, you can only do so much until you do screw it up though. So keep that in mind. So this one's for the 1.25 ratio. I have the 1.5 ratio on here. And this one, like I was saying, I did a different approach, to where I left the 8 teeth on there, and then I drilled out a 5 millimeter hole out of this gear, and it had to be absolutely perfect. And you can tell there's barely any material to cut out a 5 millimeter hole on this thing, because it was already too small. I wouldn't be able to do that with the 10 gear. I can barely get away with it. The 12 tooth, the 10 tooth wouldn't be able to do this. So, of course, I already did this though before I came up with the other idea. And I'm gonna glue this one on permanently. So once I'm gonna get it perfectly seated flat, and then I'm gonna permanently super glue it, and then that one will just stay that way for good. So it looks like it could be like really wobbly or off, but honestly you can press it and get it perfectly lined up, and then once I glue it, it'll be perfect. Like, so don't let that like confuse you, because I had it perfect for a second there until I took it back off. But I'll make sure it's like perfectly flush and glue it, and then make sure it's set that way, and then let it dry, and then it should be good. Let's see, take that off. And then this one is a 16 tooth. See, and it's actually, so yeah, I had to cut out a 3mm hole there, and then the 1mm notches on each side to make it the 5mm diameter that it needs to be to slide on to this thing. It's hard to see, so getting the lighting and the focus to work with this black material is kind of a pain, but yeah. And so the 16 tooth one is the biggest you can go until you can't go any bigger than that, because then you won't be able to get the teeth lined up with the rigid rear axle, which that was the next hardest thing to tackle after I got this done. So this was hard to do right off rip, doing all 4 of these to fit right. And then once you're done with that, the next thing to tackle is this part, where you need to shift it left or right depending on which size gear you're going to use. So if I'm using a bigger gear, I got to shift it all the way over to the side there to the left. And if I'm using a smaller one, I need to shift it over to the right. And coming up with an idea to be able to interchange was a pain. So luckily I have a bunch of these differentials that came with the car. Like I had 2 sets that came with the original Mini-Z all-wheel drive here that I can hack up. And then I also have a set or 2 sets of the ones that came with my WL Toys K969, and then you take it apart. And then this part right here is what you can chop off, and you can use that to make for different size, different sizes for the ratios. You can either chop these nubs all the way off or cut them halfway depending on which size you need. I already chopped off, the other ones. You just take a razor. This material is easy to cut through compared to the black material that came with the Mini-Z. That stuff's a little bit harder to cut through than this material is. So you just gotta chop that off, and then you gotta cut a big enough hole where you cut this off at to be able to slide over the differential, the rear rigid axle, I guess you could say. So this needs to fit over that, because the original one, you can see how big the hole is on the original. And I wanted to use all these instead of messing with the original. So if I ever want to go back to just doing stock the way it was, I can always go back. I have the stock 31 spur gear, and then I have this stock gear that goes on the rigid axle. So I can always go back if I want to, if I don't end up liking any of this. So that's, that was nice to be able to have the option of going back to the way it was if this doesn't work out. You can see this little piece it's actually like a little piece of cardboard type thing. It's like a spacer. So I was gonna do 4 different ones of these, but I ended up only needing to do 2, where I had to cut the nubs completely off on this one to be able to shift that one all the way down or up, depending on which ones. Like this one's going to be for the 14 tooth and the 16 tooth. So the bigger gears, basically. I'm going to use this. All I have to do is put one of these little shims with it for the 14, and then if I'm going to run the 16, I just take it off and I run it by itself for the 16. And for the 10 and the 12, I'm using this one. So right now it's set up for the 10 tooth gear. And then if I take off the little the little shim out of there, it'll be set up for the 12 tooth, so the 1.5 ratio. So instead of having to cut all 4 of them like I thought I was going to do, I only needed to cut 2 of these and then just use some shims to shift it over. And there's not a lot of material to work with, so if you do this mod, you gotta leave yourself just enough plastic to screw into. Like, I barely got the screws to really seat well into these without going too far. You gotta actually cut the little screw tips. You gotta shorten them a little bit compared to the ones that they come with. Yeah, so I just had to just slightly chop off the tip a little bit. So I have 2 different sets of screws. One set for the shorter set if I'm going to use no shim, and then I use the longer set when I add the shim to it, so it can actually reach all the way to the gear here, and then be able to hold it still, and it doesn't come off or anything. So that's what I did for those. If I have to, like I said, I have 2 extras I can always chop up, and if I need to redo, or if these holes get stripped out too much or something, I can chop these up and make another set if I need to. But hopefully I'll find one of the ratios that I like, and I'll just stick with that. And if I have to, I can end up gluing it, in place to stay permanently if I like the way it is and want to keep it that way and don't want to interchange everything. But for now, this is going to be good for testing, so I can figure out which direction I want to go, if I want to go down to a lower gear ratio, if I want to go all the way up to the higher gear ratio, or just stick in the middle. So all these options are great, when you're doing all this testing to figure out what you want to do. Let's see, what else am I missing here? But yeah, so if you're going to do this, you can't really use the long 94 millimeters per gear to do this with, because it would be too long. You can't really add these to that unless you want to, sand and drill it all the way down, which that would just be too much of a pain. I mean, I could do that if I needed to, but it seemed like just using a shorter one for the 90 millimeter and then just chopping the teeth off was the easiest route. So I'm not going to use this 27. I was just doing this one for testing, just to see how it came out first before I started cutting up the 31. But I mean, I did it real quick with a drill, a hand drill, and this and that. Like, I wasn't really perfect with everything. So if you take, your time and really be tedious with this, you can basically do this perfect to where there will be no wobble, no imperfections or whatever. But I mean, I was just trying to get these done and get this going. So, I did the best I could just by, using the hand drill and stuff without being too far off. But I can kind of press them down hard enough to where it seems like they seat flat, and they shouldn't have any variation in their movement. They might be a little bit off on one side or the other. I just gotta press down more on that. And like I said, if I end up liking this gear ratio, then I can just glue it permanently in place and just make sure it's seated perfect all the way around. So yeah, so that's basically what I did for the counter steer mod. There's really not too much more to it than that. I just got to go through and test all these and figure out which one that I end up liking the most, whether it's the low end or the high end. And then of course I'll report back onto here and tell you which one I prefer the most, or if I like them all and I want to end up just keeping it the way it is, and if they work well or not. So I will cover all that in the next video. I will do the test drive and everything with each gear and see which one is my favorite, or which ones I like, and stick with those. But the next part of this video, I'm actually going to go over the Mini-Z bodies that I'm working on still. Like, I putting body kits on these bodies, like the Skyline. I put the hood bonnet on, and I put a new lip on here, and then I also put some epoxy resin over this. So if I run into anything, this is like almost indestructible now. I just gotta sand it before I paint it. Same with the rear spoilers. I had to epoxy this guy to make sure that it's nice and rigid and doesn't break, because it's real easy to break, especially where the screws go. There's not a lot of material there, so this epoxy will strengthen it up to where I can put the screws in and not have to worry about the 3D print breaking, because I 3D print these myself. But I also have a couple other bodies and stuff I'm working on that I'm gonna do, and it's with some body kits, so I'm gonna talk about those some more in the next part of this video. But yeah, so I'm hoping you learned a little something here on the counter steer mod. I'm gonna do the test drives next and then let you know what the results were. And real quick before I end this video, I just wanna show you, like, this is the 1.25 ratio with the 10 tooth, and let's see. So you can see it's doable. It's actually pretty good. Doesn't sound like it's you know, getting bound up or anything, so I guess I'll see how it goes when I actually start doing the test driving, but it's possible to do if you want to try like an interchanging method, you know, where you're interchanging the ratios to see which one you like. It's possible to do instead of having to do a permanent method. Yep. And I just want to talk about the bodies as well. I have a Supra that I'm going to be doing. I have a wide body kit for it. So put the front lip on. And side fenders. Of course, side skirts. Just a full wide body kit. So I'll probably do a whole video on just doing this body with the body kit by itself. I gotta paint this one. After I'm done sanding it, I gotta paint this one black, and then I'm probably gonna do a color shift, like purple and blue. Kind of like my McLaren I have here, so I'll probably do this paint job on this skyline, and then I have different colors for the other ones. Like this skyline, I have a full wide body kit to put on, so yeah, full kit. And I'll probably put a hood bonnet on this one too. And also, after I put the body kits on, I fill in the gaps with a little bit of this putty. It's kind of like Bondo. So you can see I put the bonnet on here, and then I filled in the cracks with that Bondo, and then I sanded around it, and then it's pretty smooth to where it looks like it's actually part of the hood. So when I paint it, you'll never even know that I added that piece on there. It'll look like it was actually part of the hood. And I did the same thing for where I cut off little nubs back here for the stock spoiler that came with the car. Chopped it off and then filled in all that area with some of that Bondo, and then sanded back over it. And so now it's flat and you wouldn't even know. Compared to what I did with the original body, where I had to put some like Sharpie over it, because I don't have any Millennium Jade or anything. I have to repaint this whole thing, so I just did that for a temporary fix on that. But eventually I'm going to redo this one too. I'm thinking about doing the Paul Walker special, you know, from Too Fast, Too Furious. I'll do it silver, with the blue stripes and the blue decals and everything. So that's what I'll end up doing. I'll probably put a lip on it just like this one to try to match it as best I can, and just the side skirts, because the side skirts are they're not really low on these stock bodies, so these side skirts actually bring it down to be in line with the front lip and everything. So that's future projects. This one will probably be the last one I end up doing. I'll end up doing this wide body kit one first before that one, and then of course I'm going to do the Supra as well, get this one done, And like I said, I'll probably do an entire video on doing the body kits, and then maybe a video on painting them as well. But we'll see how it goes. I just wanted to cover all that before I end this video. So I hope you enjoyed the content, and stay tuned for part 3 where I do the test driving for all the different gear ratios, and I probably should have this one done painted and everything by then as well, so I'll show that one off. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.